Everyone. My name is Teresa Handy, and I am going to be the moderator for our session. I'm going to give people a couple, well, it's been a minute, so I think people will come over. Before we begin, on behalf of ADEIL, we'd like to thank our host, Troy University, and our technical coordinator, Marcy Shirley from Troy University. We are thankful for their contributions in making this event possible. Thank you for joining us for this presentation, and I'm now going to introduce you to our presenter. Today we have Randy Lambert, who is the Engagement and Delivery Manager at Flutter International. Flutter International is the leading global player, leading betting and gaming into the future, responsibility and sustainability. Randy leads the platform services delivery team at Flutter International, and as an engagement and delivery manager, he has led global teams. I'm gonna move it over here so I can read it better. He has led global teams and worked with for over 2 decades in the IT industry. He holds an MBA, PMP, and ACP from PMI, lots of acronyms, and he is certified in Azure and AWS Cloud Foundations, along with certified Agile leadership from Scrum Alliance. Furthermore, Randy is a certified compassionate leader from the Center for Compassionate Leadership. Prior to Flutter International, Randy held various leadership positions at GoEasy Limited. He started out as an IT vendor management analyst with Invesco and expanded into IT procurement and IT project management. Over time, his work of leading global teams and combined with his own commitment to mindfulness led to his current role as a PhD student with Troy University. He has lived and worked in Canada, the United States, and Japan. Welcome, Randy. We look forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you very much for that, Teresa. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
And while he's doing that, we're going to take questions at the end, so feel free to put them in the chat if you'd like, and I will share those for you if you are unable to.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Yes. And
Oh,
I'll let
wonderful.
you know at 5 minutes.
Okay, great. Let me go ahead and get started then. Thank you very much for today. Today we'll be discussing global leadership and distance education through a lens of mindfulness, a holistic approach. So myself, I'm Randy Lambert, like Mandy just said. I've been leading global management teams of project managers for over 2 decades. And right now I'm a PhD student for Troy University. So the couple learning objectives that I wanted to cover today is that I wanted to discuss perspectives on global leadership, theory and practices. And I wanted also, the second learning objective is to recognize where distance learning and global leadership combine themselves like a Venn diagram. They come together also with a third intersection, which is mindfulness, to show that there is holistic support systems that bring all of these three together. So these 3 themes of global leadership, mindfulness, and distance learning are very high in popularity today. And there's very high interest in all 3 of these intersections. But when I looked into this, there's very little research and study done on the cross-section of this Venn diagram. Distance learning, global leadership, and mindfulness is not something that is highly researched, and it's something that we're missing. And I think that's why I think the study of these 3 in combination is relevant to today's world. And I'll show studies on what's been done. And today's agenda, I'll define mindfulness. I'll start out by defining mindfulness. Then I'll go on to talking about global leadership, and then bringing in these 2 together as a holistic education method for delivery on distance. And then I'll talk about teaching the teachers who are the new global leaders and teaching mindfulness for global leadership. I'll touch on future possibilities. And through the future possibilities, I'll talk about the weaknesses to the applications and finish with the strengths to the applications. And at the end, there's 4 pages of references available upon request. If you can, guys, please leave your questions to the end. So mindfulness. One definition that I use often is Jon Kabat-Zinn. Jon Kabat-Zinn is a medical practitioner who developed mindfulness-based stress reduction out of the University of Massachusetts Medical Center. So his definition, mindfulness, is moment-to-moment awareness cultivated by purposefully paying attention to things we ordinarily never give a moment's thought to. So his definition is very much medical. It's very much was created for the secular purpose of exploiting the possibilities of developing mindfulness to the masses using a medical method. It was used for mass consumption. So a couple of the detriments to this definition is a study done by Highland in 2017 that calls for this definition to be like McDonald's restaurants. It's McDonaldization of mindfulness, or in Highland's words, McMindfulness. So another definition is through Nyanaponika Thera, which is a practitioner, a Sri Lankan Theravadan Buddhist monk. So it is a very much different definition of mindfulness. His definition is based on Satipatthana, which is a Sanskrit, is Pali for mindfulness, or Smriti, which is Sanskrit for mindfulness. And his definition of mindfulness is based on two phases. The first phase is where the object of attention is centered by the observer, and the observer dwells on this object of attention. And as he dwells on the object, the observer starts to build a relationship with the object. And that's what is in psychology called associative thinking. Then the second phase of this definition, they move into that once the relationship is built, the observer puts his cognition onto the object, which is now referencing the object with subjectivity. So it's very much a religious definition, but both definitions can be used for leadership purposes, because as you apply on the object your mindfulness, it helps for the application of this in leadership scenarios, so you help make better decisions. So when we talk about leadership now, moving on, distance education plays the most crucial role in building inclusive and sustainable organizations in today's environment. So organizations are tackling uncertainty of stakeholders' expectations and adapting to digital revolution, which require much higher levels of education at a distance interaction. So institutions are becoming rapidly learning systems to dispel prosperity and well-being through their academic missions, as we've seen through ADEIL. So right now, we are traversing the fourth industrial revolution, and it's driven by artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, blockchain, even global shocks to the environments like COVID-19 pandemics. And this has triggered waves and waves of innovation that we didn't have before, even 10 years ago. So with all of this innovation, I'd like to get to the right-hand side of the slide, which is global leadership. But to get there, I'm going to build on leadership theories, starting with the 1930s, which is in the great man theory, which was built on the image of a great leader. So we're talking about the Winston Churchills of the world. So in the 1950s, then moved on to behavioral contingency, which is adapting leadership to the situation. Is very much contextual. So the leadership method that you used depended on the situation that you were in. Moving on to the 1970s, which is the leadership follower exchange, and which is a theory that the follower's performance depends on how the leader sees the follower. And moving on to the 1990s, which is transactional, which is now with the dot-com boom, a lot of small businesses emerged. And so we saw entrepreneurial leadership and transactional, which means leadership depends on threats, on rewards and punishments given to the follower. So it's very much interchange of threats and of punishments and rewards. So once we get to the 2010s, then we start seeing global leadership, which is a view of international landscape. We're so interconnected internationally. Everything is now built into each other, whether it's economic systems or political systems. So that international landscape has created a cross-cultural of connections. So to tackle that, the new leader has to have a global mindset. There's nothing that a leader can do nowadays without having a global mindset, because everything is interconnected. And of course, responsible leadership, which authors have talked about, the triple bottom line, which leaders now have to worry about: profit, people, and the planet. So a lot of environmental efforts are on the side. So this timeline that you see here was taken from Lin Juan Gould Brennan's book, Development of Timeline Leadership Theories. And why did I choose Lin Juan Gould Brennan? Is because she is one of the proponents of developing Troy University's Global Leadership PhD program. So she has led the effort of global higher education through a distance methodology. And she bases her education process on what she calls critical reflection. So that's a process of examining assumptions, beliefs, values, and traditions, and a process where it's put into practice through a research methodology where they emphasize reflexivity. So I'm part of that program, and I can tell you that what they do is the influence of the researcher and her impact on the position of conducting research is through having cohorts. And so she's now collected data through several cohorts that have gone through Troy University, and she's done a study on one of the cohorts, which had 27 organizational leaders, which are the students of Troy University's doctoral program. And what she's found out is that the critical reflexology is done through weekly online discussion and course reflections that are done and open on modules that are open once a week. And students are asked to conduct reflections and discussions based on the theme of the week, which are theories and practices for global leadership. So a couple of the findings that Lin Juan Gould Brennan found in her study was that emotional intelligence is critical for leadership competencies. And also cultural intelligence is really important as part of that emotional intelligence for global leadership. And that in multicultural settings, the expression of emotions comes in different ways, whether it's from the student or from the teacher, but this is where mindfulness comes in to help out. So mindfulness brought in with leadership theories and distance education. So I found that there was a study from Pena in 2022 who discussed, Pena was coming with a study before the pandemic, but the pandemic hit and he had to change all his study to the pandemic methodology of distance education. So he had to change all of his study midway through to moderate to the global pandemic. So he came up with 5 things that are takeaways for teaching distance education through a pandemic. One of them is rethinking, engagement and assessment, and shifting the process more to an approach where the engagement is meant to provide between the student and the teacher different ways of learning, otherwise than in the classroom setting. And it gives the opportunity for students to have multiple opportunities for learning. Number 2 is modeling, which is talking about the emphasis of the value of adults showing students how to learn new things through focusing on new skills and development rather than just academic mastery. Number 3, education. And Pena talks about integrating a holistic approach to support students' learning and motivation. So what he found was students were doing breakout rooms during the pandemic and expressing all the anxiety that they were feeling during the pandemic, helping out their education at the same time. So this evolved into relationships and building relationships, and at the end, building communities, because these breakout rooms started what they call communities of practice, and fostering a community of connection where they prioritize relationships above anything else to facilitate the learning that was happening on the formal settings on the formal classes, especially during challenging times, which was the pandemic. So when we come to dialoguing of who are the new global leaders, I believe the teachers are the new global leaders. So a couple of studies that we're seeing is Flores in 2018. He touched on the interaction with students in a traditional and online settings. The daily interactions on an online setting, they play a crucial role. And what happens is that verbal and nonverbal exchanges are key components in the online setting as well as the brick and mortar settings. So a couple of the success and failures was that there's less flexibility in the online setting due to the diverse backgrounds that were highlighted in the challenges that we're seeing in this study. So teaching, particularly meeting students' needs through a virtual and distance means it brought some challenges, and it brought some influences as well. The second study that I saw where they were using the mindfulness to teach the teachers in a distance education setting was Hirschberg. So his study was primarily conceptualized as a stress and reducing stress to the teachers of kindergarten to grade 8 levels. So the emphasis has been placed on how mindfulness training through distance education reduces the stress levels that are accumulated through the daily interactions of teaching of kindergartens to grade 8s. And he predicted skill development through mindfulness training, which allows the kindergarten through grade 8 teachers to put into practice what they've learned and filling the gap of knowledge and practice and evidence and training that it reduced stress levels quite a bit. And there was a lot of correlation in stress level reductions. So the hypothesis was that most teachers of the research is that mindfulness training reduces teacher stress and negative effects by improving teaching practices. The third study was Klushman in 2023, where he reported that mindfulness practices had a calming effect on the teacher and made them feel less stressed. And these practices aided in improving emotion regulation, helping teachers allowing to handle their challenges and situations of stress better. And that the mindfulness program served as a reminder for teachers to take their breaks and focus on their breathing, especially during stressful moments. This heightened the awareness of making them more mindful of their emotions and the reactions when they were in the classroom at distance levels. So moving on, once they taught the teachers, there's the global leadership levels of teaching has come into effect in a couple of studies that I saw with Berman-Saw in 2020 and Frizzell in 2016. So Berman-Saw, the study involved key teachers from Dharma students, coordinators, and practitioners from the Plum Village Monastery. So you can see a picture here is a famous practitioner in Buddhism and mindfulness called Thich Nhat Hanh. Now, Thich Nhat Hanh was from Southeast Asia, but he ended up living in France. And he was a famous practitioner of mindfulness that created a monastery in France called Plum Village. Now, this is the study that Berman-Saw did, actually using the monks and the practitioners in Plum Village, using distance education to teach mindfulness. So those monks are now the global leaders of proponents of mindfulness. And the study saw that the leaders, they demonstrated qualities of compassion, empathy, non-judgment, and dealing with their community members. And especially, they found peaceful ways to resolve conflicts at the leadership levels. And the study documented the emphasis of the importance of understanding situations with compassion, empathy, and applying a mindful leadership. And so the end result shows that the mindful leadership can develop the ability to develop compassion and attention without judgment, and shows that leaders have an openness and a way to practice mindfulness for long periods of time that can direct oneself's attention to others. The second study that showed this was Frizzell in 2016. So Frizzell, what he found was traditional ways of learning, being, and acting will not suffice. People must open their hearts and minds to techniques and practices that foster vertical learning and transformation. So Frizzell the study found out that minimal research has been done on the um on the training, the resulting in a growing divide between theory and practice of applying mindfulness in a distance education setting. So he found that there makes a real difference to addressing global challenges and global leadership challenges with the needs to open the hearts and minds and new ways of learning. Like he says in this quote, traditional ways of learning will not suffice. We have to move on to new ways of learning, which is distance education. So the future possibilities of putting these three ideas together of global leadership, mindfulness, and distance education can be seen in Lamberto in 2020. He also did a study through the COVID-19 pandemic. And in his study, you can see that the diagram here, what he found out was you take people from the left-hand side, which is mindfulness courses, and you apply these four intersections, and you reach the left-hand side, which is improved stress coping. So Lumberto found that the course content delivered online in asynchronous online learning platforms incorporated recorded videos and readings and online discussion boards helped the students with their daily mindfulness practices and helped them promote better online learning and improve stress coping through this online learning. The second future possibility that is seen is actually with Peoria in 2023, because he applied mindfulness meditation techniques through distance learning, but in a medical setting. So his setting was patellofemoral pain, which is knee pain. The patients that were suffering from knee pain could not travel to the hospital to receive their mindfulness techniques for stress reduction. So they delivered them through online settings, and they couldn't move. The patients couldn't move because of their knee pain. So they got their computers, they set up online education methods, and they started delivering mindfulness techniques to help them manage their stress levels, manage their pain levels, and be more mindful of chronic conditions. And this was positive correlation in all three here with the Peoria study. So, but the weaknesses in the applications are seen, I saw them in three studies. In Yalman in 2022, the normal run-of-the-mill distance education problems were always seen, which was technical issues, problems with the internet, problems with the voice, the video doesn't play. So those technical issues are always around when even studying mindfulness. So that was also seen in Yalman. The third one was Gardner-Nix, which was another pain reduction, a study for pain, just like Peoria, but her cohort did not show positive correlation of reducing stress for pain reduction therapy. So the study, the future is out there to have studies that more prove or disprove the theories, but Gardner-Nix was one that disproved it, the correlation. And the third one is Burroughs in 2017. So as you get deeper and deeper into mindfulness studies, practitioners will see something called, what in Buddhism is called nyam. So as you meditate more and more, and you get very adept at meditation and mindfulness, you might have chronic migraines or heart palpitations. These are momentary things that affect you physically. So either nightmares start coming up, or
you have 5 minutes, Randy.
Yeah, and so Burroughs calls this the Pandora's box. The more you meditate, you might see some physical ailments. And so that was seen in Burroughs. So that's a weakness in application. So the strengths to the applications is, for example, Hawkesworth and Bauer talked about, as he studied delivering mindfulness, he saw that the design of the mindfulness education methods is very important, whether the design of the PowerPoint or the design of the video. The design really affects the effectiveness, the efficacy of mindfulness techniques. And the last one was Moran's study that showed the Park Research Lab in Palo Alto, California. Dr. Palaoki the importance is that in brick and mortar education settings, there's always the lean in, a little whisper. Hey, I think this is good. Or can you give me more information on that? That whisper is missing in Teams and Zoom settings. So Dr. Palaoki is developing Mad Hatter, a software he's calling Mad Hatter, that will incorporate the whispers in Teams and Zoom settings. So that was one of the positive applications. I know I'm closing. So in closing, to review, the learning objectives was to discuss global leadership theory and practices, and to recognize where distance education, global leadership can be combined with mindfulness for a holistic support system. So the references are here. There's 4 pages. They're available upon request, but I'll go back to opening it up for any questions that you guys might have.
Thank you so much. What an intriguing topic that you were discussing. I put a link in the chat about Plum Village, so people can go and see that for themselves. Jen Robinson says 100% Randy, those side comments and ideas can be just as important as those presented in plenary. So we are there any questions? We'll open the floor for questions. Do you have any questions, any comments you would like to add, Randy, since you do have about 3 minutes?
Jen,
Yeah, can I ask a question, Randy? What is your advice for those of us when we're putting together, when we're developing courses? How can we integrate mindfulness in a way that is helpful for students on the front end of developing courses?
developing education for students with the mindfulness setting, it is developing, like I said in the studies, is engaging. You have to open up the engagement with the students and making sure that the students have a method of giving back their opinions and having, well, in one of the studies they talked about the students communicating with each other and having open methods of having them open their own discussions. Like I said, these community of the practice that opened up on the side. So as you develop your courses, you might be mindful that the students want to talk amongst each other. And so those communities of practice that develop amongst the students is something that you guys also should keep in mind as you develop education, because the students do want, there's no other settings other than online for them to speak. They can't meet in the hallways, they can't meet after school unless they do so. So putting some of this communities of practice inside your programs, I think will help the students and be more mindful of their wanting to communicate with each other.
I agree 100%. We did that in our live learning and had great success. Randy, thank you so much for this intriguing presentation. I have included the evaluation form in the chat for those of you all. I will do it again for those of you all who would like to provide some feedback. And I wanted just to say, please be sure to complete the conference evaluation and please enjoy the rest of the ADEIL conference, and you may join your other session now. So if you
Thank you
need
very
that,
much.
thank you so much, Randy. If you need the form, okay, people are already leaving. Perfect. Great job, Randy. It was very informative.
Thank you.
Yes, excellent job. Thank you.